Farmers are renowned for taking risks. If there's no immediate consequences, well, you might not understand that you've hurt yourself in the long term. If you got a blood nose straight away or a rash came up, you'd be thinking about it then and there, but no one really likes to think about their mortality in 20 or 30 years' time. My family have been growing potatoes here since the late 1960s. My grandfather purchased the property, and then my father moved out here once he was married. Now I live next door, so haven't gone far.
Why hasn't that started?
Well, it's through the breaker again. I don't know why that hasn't started. I've learnt a lot from my father. Anyone who works with their family will know that it has its moments. But yeah, no, it's good to work with your parents, and I enjoy working outside, so it's rewarding.
Ben's grandfather, Lindsay Myers, was the first in the family to grow potatoes here. His legacy is stamped all over the property. In the late 1980s, he developed Parkinson's and died in 2008 after years living with the disease.
When my grandfather was still alive, I must admit I didn't know much about Parkinson's other than it was a bad thing.
Parkinson's disease is the fastest growing neurodegenerative disease in the world. For the vast majority of people, genetics is only a minor contributor to the development of the disease. With evidence, environmental factors, including farm chemicals, are the larger threat.
We use chemicals like any farmer just as a management tool for pests and weeds and whatnot, but yeah, we try and minimise use of chemical where we can. We only spray what we sort of need to. I've only taken on spraying the past few years when we've updated some machinery, but I'm fairly lucky. I don't seem to get headaches or rashes or blood noses, as some other people may have described.
The best time to apply Paraquat solution is in the early stage of weed growth.
One of the farm chemicals that may be linked to Parkinson's is Paraquat, a broad-spectrum herbicide that's been on the market since the 1960s. It has been banned in dozens of countries around the world due to its toxicity.
The Paraquat is very rapidly absorbed into the cells of the plant, where it interrupts the normal life processes.
Paraquat's an alternative to Roundup with a different mode of action, and it's designed to burn off anything it touches very rapidly. So it's just a quick death on contact. It's not so much going into the plant, but just to kill anything it touches.
What does it say on the label about its toxicity, do you know?
Oh, there's I read the label this morning. I think when you look at the group that it belongs to, it's very evident that it's a dangerous, harmful chemical. And it does talk about health precautions, and if you're having reactions to it, you should cease using it. But it does basically put all the onus back on the operator.
Hi, Dad. Look.
Hi, Gussie. How are you going?
That was good.
What are you got on your hand?
Look, here's Grandpa.
Hi, Gran.
There is a lot of Parkinson's in this family. David's father and his uncle both had it. His brother-in-law has it.
Yes.
It's really very, very prevalent in this community.
At school, more time on the
You
phone.
walk into the bathroom and you see Ben's work clothes laying over the kid's bath. And you think, oh, I wonder if he went spraying in those. Or, you know, you see a family member with a tremor.
Do I worry about the exposure to chemicals? It's in the back of your mind, but it gets swamped out by the day-to-day worries, and you know, it's sort of how do you keep the wife happy? How do you you know, there's a lot of day-to-day concerns that probably swamp out the long-term concerns.
Ben's uncle, David Jolliffe, lives a few kilometres up the road in Newlyn.
That's right, no.
He's farmed potatoes here since the 1960s and also has Parkinson's.
Dad, when he left school, they bought a tractor, like one of those there. Sorry about this mess. This is the 30C David Brown. made early in the 50s, about 51, and it runs like a clock. It's got a double seat, so the driver sits over there, so I was riding around when I was 2 and 3 year olds. It's almost soothing for me. That might sound stupid, but well, I just love to get them out and drive around the block, put it away again. And tractors like this with no cabins on them in the springtime, the smell of the dirt and that is just fabulous.
Paraquat is among the chemical herbicides that David's been exposed to over his lifetime.
I've done all of the spraying pretty much here for the last 50, 55 years. I can remember marking potatoes. We used to use the plane a bit and we were spraying them for moths. And I was walking across it every 22 paces and the plane would fly over your head and just loop around and go back. And I don't know what chemical they used, but when we were walking across the paddock, there were moths and things flying up. And when we were walking back, they weren't. So whatever they'd sprayed it with seemed to work pretty quick. My hand used to just the faintest of tremor. And if I did that and squeezed, it'd stop straight away. Early on, it didn't affect me. The tremor, you know, it signed my name now. I tried to sign the other day and I couldn't. I say to people jokingly, I say, I'll hold the pen, you move the paper.
Do you wonder about whether or not your Parkinson's is linked?
Oh, absolutely. You know, there's 4 guys around here, David Mackay, Dean, David Pedretti, out at Mount Prospect. David's behind the hill here. The guy up the end of this road, he's not David, so we won't let him in the club. The painter's got it. And that's just in a rifle shot sort of around here. And we all got it about the same time. I mean, what was it, sunspots on the sun? But the chemical companies have got a bit to answer for.
Paraquat is the active ingredient in 141 registered products in Australia, and more than 10 million kilograms of the chemical was purchased here in the last financial year. The global agricultural chemical giant Syngenta is the original manufacturer. The company has been fielding concerns for decades about Paraquat's link to Parkinson's disease, but its lead scientist maintains it's completely safe for farmers when used correctly.
Syngenta started to look at these allegations back in the 1980s and 1990s, where we started to monitor the health of people who'd been spraying Paraquat, and there was absolutely no evidence that they were in any sense developing effects suggestive of Parkinson's disease.
But numerous independent scientists disagree. US professor Deborah Corey-Slechta was one of the first to investigate Paraquat exposure in mice more than 20 years ago.
Those studies started out by looking at the effects of injected Paraquat and its effects on brain dopamine systems, counting the number of dopamine neurons, since the loss of those dopamine neurons is the basis of Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's is also characterized by motor deficits, so we would look at motor behavior of these mice as well.
The professor co-authored a paper in 2002 that showed Paraquat induced Parkinson's symptoms in the brains of mice. She says Syngenta made its opposition clear from the start.
Whenever we presented data, it would typically be on a poster format, and the minute we were there pinning up the poster, the Syngenta folks would be there attacking the data. That was pretty standard for them to do that, to show up and try to attack the data.
These internal documents were obtained through litigation in the US by Parkinson's patients who are suing Syngenta. They show the company was closely monitoring the science. The company's own scientists were advised to avoid measuring Paraquat levels in the brain, since the detection of any Paraquat in the brain, no matter how small, will not be perceived externally in a positive light. Syngenta also developed a strategy to publicly refute the link between Paraquat and Parkinson's by offering alternative experimental findings.
They presented this data at a scientific meeting. They said that they found no significant effect of Paraquat on dopamine neurons.
But privately, Syngenta's scientists have found the opposite. These confidential internal studies, conducted in the early 2000s, have never been publicly released. The ABC obtained them through a Canadian court, where Syngenta is preparing to defend a Paraquat class action. They confirm Syngenta scientists found Paraquat destroyed dopamine neurons in the brains of mice injected with the chemical.
I have never seen this before, so this is news to me, and this is from 2007, I believe, so quite a while ago.
Until now, Dr. Corey Slechta was unaware Syngenta had privately replicated her findings.
So while they were trying to repudiate my studies, they in fact replicated them and found exactly the same thing. So what they were saying publicly is totally inconsistent with what they were finding internally. That yes, there is a relationship between Paraquat and these Parkinson's disease markers.
Other documents uncovered through litigation in the US show the company was presented with a study in the 1960s that showed Paraquat produced signs of neurotoxicity. Rats who were poisoned with Paraquat developed symptoms including spasms, stiffness and tremor. A post-mortem found the chemical had entered the brain of a woman who died of Paraquat poisoning. The company accepts that Paraquat is a toxic chemical that should be used with care. What is disputed is whether its use causes neurotoxicity in the brain, which can contribute to Parkinson's disease. Syngenta continues to publicly discredit Professor Corey Slechta's work and maintains that Paraquat does not cause Parkinson's. Syngenta said injecting mice with Paraquat was not relevant to real-world exposure. The company declined an interview but have a website devoted to Paraquat. This is their head scientist, Philip Botham.
I absolutely agree that Paraquat is safe for farmers and growers to use. There is no causative link at all between Paraquat exposure and Parkinson's disease.
I think they have a very vested interest in maintaining a profit stream, so the longer they can do that before something gets banned, the more profit they make, the less loss there is. So I think that's part of the motivation for this.
In a statement, the company said, Syngenta strongly rejects insinuations about the lack of integrity of our research and science. We reject any allegation that profit motive would outweigh our commitment to safety. The hypothesis that Paraquat causes Parkinson's disease is not accepted in the medical community or peer-reviewed science.
We know that in rural, remote areas, we do have this higher level of Parkinson's disease. So the pilot program was developed with funding from the government to get nurses into the community to support people with Parkinson's disease. Do you want me to take this off?
Yes.
Are you happy for me to take it off?
Yes.
Gai Brown works as a movement disorder nurse in Horsham in Western Victoria. She provides support to around 80 patients in the district who have Parkinson's disease.
Hands out straight out front. Lovely. And then we'll do a pancake. Flip and fast as you can. We're doing a comprehensive assessment today. Do they need any support? Do they need any extra referrals? Been having any of the spasms?
In the eyes,
This nursing program came off the back of a Monash University study that used pharmacy records to track Parkinson's prevalence in Victoria. It found higher rates of Parkinson's disease in rural areas and found clusters of the disease in specific farming districts in the state's west. The study didn't investigate any link between Paraquat and Parkinson's disease, but some studies in the US have found a link, including one that showed farmers who used Paraquat were 2.5 times more likely to develop the disease.
Parkinson's diagnosis can take a while, so I'm really seeing an end result of something probably that was more involved 20, 30 years ago. So symptoms really rear their head in full after a long period of time.
The rate of Parkinson's is growing in Australia, but without further research, it's difficult to pinpoint the reasons why.
I'd say that farmers are overly represented in the cohort of patients I see with Parkinson's disease. I think really we have an opportunity to try and prevent people getting Parkinson's disease in the first place. That's why I'm here. I'd like to potentially intervene at that level and see if we can stop it before it even gets a chance to start. My aim here is just to inform you about what the science says about this topic.
In August, Oxford-trained neurologist Dr Wesley Thevatharson held a community information session at the Dean Hall near Ballarat.
The question is there proof that these agents cause Parkinson's disease? And this is an issue that, the chemical companies hide behind, is that the threshold for proof in science is extremely high. Scientific proof would require us to do experiments on humans. It would require us to deliberately take a group of humans, expose them to different doses of pesticides, follow them up after different time periods, chop up their brains and look for causation. Obviously that's never going to happen. So what do we have instead that will replace that? We have animal studies and also we have natural world observations. So just seeing what happens in the community at large. And this is the same way that we've proven that smoking and asbestos cause lung cancer.
How much exposure do you need to have? Like, is it one whiff of it or is it multiple years working with it?
The evidence suggests that the greater the exposure, the greater the risk.
For those of us who live on farms and have kids on farms or have been using chemicals over the years, is there anything you can do to mitigate that risk once you've had those exposures over time, or is it just a matter of waiting and hoping?
I don't want to make everyone fearful that they've had a bad Paraquat exposure or they've had years of being around Paraquat. That's it, I'm stuffed. I've got Parkinson's disease, I'm just waiting for it to happen. I don't want to give that impression at all. So this is all about risk and probability. And the only thing that you can do is be proactive about your future exposures and try and limit them. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming today.
Did you know that there might be linked to Parkinson's disease?
This is all new to me, yeah, so.
Yeah. It doesn't say that on the label.
No, it doesn't.
Well, it's good to know things like this because a lot of what we get recommended to use with agros, we don't get this information from them or from the chemical, so a lot of stuff in the past we've been unaware of. Like 20 years ago when I was spraying, I never knew any of this. Whereas it's becoming, the resources are better nowadays, so it's worth keeping an eye on, I think.
I suppose ignorance is bliss, so, 20 years ago no one might have known about it and it's slowly crumbling away in the background. It's like with asbestos, like everyone thought it was a great product and all of a sudden 20, 30 years later it's a massive issue.
I don't see a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. For people like me, I can't move, I can't walk, and I'll be under a wheelchair shortly.
"67 countries have banned Paraquat due to its toxicity. It's prohibited in the UK, China and the EU. But in Australia, demand for the farm chemical is as strong as ever."
We moved into becoming very reliant on Paraquat. It's become an important part of the whole program, one that's cost effective, minimises the amount of fuel that we use, minimises the amount of labour required and minimises the overall number of passes across a paddock.
The Commonwealth regulator is the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority, or the APVMA. A review of Paraquat has been ongoing since 1997 until a directive from the federal government last year to expedite the process. The draft Paraquat review was released in July and is currently open for consultation.
The review looked first and foremost at that safety question, especially for human health, and concluded that there was no new evidence that indicated that there was an undue risk if used in accordance with its label requirement.
The APVMA has proposed new restrictions for farmers to limit the environmental effects of paraquat. It also wants to introduce stricter personal protective measures for users and label changes that clearly warn of the danger if the chemical comes into contact with the skin and eyes or is directly inhaled. It maintains there is no potential long-term health impact if consumers follow the label. Scientists interviewed for this program say it's unknown how much exposure is too much when it comes to paraquat and Parkinson's disease. Research on that continues.
I think there's still a lot of unknowns. What's the critical window when those exposures would have to occur? Is it just an advanced age? Is it early on? Is it how long you're exposed? We don't know the answers to any of those questions yet, so there's still a lot to be done.
But APVMA Chief Executive Scott Hansen says concerns around any link between paraquat and Parkinson's are not considered robust.
A detailed look at the potential linkage between paraquat and Parkinson's was investigated in 2016. Our teams have looked at that data again, have looked at any new reports, any new research and any new data, and arrived at the proposed conclusion that there is no change to that outcome from 2016.
While the regulator recognises that mice injected with high doses of paraquat display Parkinson's-like symptoms, it says the overwhelming weight of evidence is that paraquat does not induce neurotoxicity in ways that are relevant to humans. That conclusion relies heavily on a Syngenta-funded study from 2012 that was never published or externally peer-reviewed.
And why would they choose to rely on an unpublished study when there is dozens that refute it?
Yeah, so again, they would not rely on one study. They look at all the studies that are made available to them and that they have access to or that
Well,
they
they're not
know.
cited.
And in which case, that's the purpose of these 3-month consultation periods.
So our researchers found that there are actually 28 studies. This is them. If you'd like to add them to the consultation period. 28 studies, independent studies, peer-reviewed in journals in just the past 2 decades, which conclude that paraquat induces one or more of the features of Parkinson's.
And so, again, a lot of those studies, I assume, would have been captured in the 2016 assessment that was conducted and therefore formed part of the outcome of that review's findings and recommendations.
In a further statement to the ABC, the regulator said nothing we showed them changed their conclusions on paraquat. A scathing government review of the APVMA released last year found serious allegations of chemical industry capture, but Scott Hansen has defended the integrity of its scientists.
In the 2 weeks I've been in the job, I can say that all of the assessment teams I've met absolutely have the highest regard for the integrity of the work that they do, the accuracy of the work that they do.
In a statement, Syngenta said both the US EPA and the APVMA had found the evidence linking paraquat to Parkinson's to be insufficient, and that despite decades of investigation, no scientist or doctor has ever concluded in a peer-reviewed scientific analysis that paraquat causes Parkinson's. Syngenta also said paraquat herbicide is safe when used as directed.
Yeah, croissants for lunch.
Well, they eat it.
Got a neurology appointment in the morning. And then gym at 12:30. I guess it's an element of feeling loss. My role has changed from wife to carer. It changes everything up. So, not easy times. People that have seen him recently have just said he's not the Dave that they know. So it looks lovely with the rain, doesn't it? Just sitting in your chair most of the day is pretty hard watching. You'll just sit there for ages, just staring out, not really connecting. So I think there's a lot there that he's not even aware of either. Parkinson's is a hideous disease, And I just think, that really need to have a good look at what they're doing with the chemicals and whatever, because it's ruining families.
In my mind, it's not good enough to say, well, we don't have a replacement or an alternative, so we can't get rid of it. For some people, it is a crucial tool in the toolbox, and they would be very sad to see it go. And that's the thing, not everyone that uses Paraquat ends up with Parkinson's, so you're rolling the dice, aren't you?